It's now an honor to introduce our keynote speaker for today's convocation, Dr. Victor La Cerva. Dr. La Cerva is currently the medical director for the Family Health Bureau of the New Mexico Department of Health and holds a clinical faculty appointment with our Department of Pediatrics. He's been working actively in violence prevention for many years as a writer and speaker, as well as an organizer of numerous workshops around the state on this topic. He is also the co-creator of the New Mexico Men's Wellness Movement, which explores the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual needs of men in our society. Dr. La Cerva is the author of numerous publications on violence prevention and other topics, including Let Peace Begin With Us, The Problem of Violence in New Mexico, Listen to Our Children, The Status of Children's Mental Health in New Mexico, and Pathways to Peace, 40 Steps to a Less Violent America. Copies of Pathway to Peace have generously been given to all graduates today by Dr. La Cerva. In his writings, Dr. La Cerva describes violence as a preventable public health problem and recommends programs and plans of action to make a difference. In addition to writing and speaking about violence, Dr. La Cerva has created and produced award-winning videos, including Stolen Childhood, which explores the effects of domestic violence on children. He's been interviewed by Bill Moyers on a public broadcasting station series on preventing violence and has also consulted with the Littleton, Colorado community after the Columbine high school shootings. In his own life, Dr. La Cerva practices what he preaches. He holds the rank of Nidan in Aikido, a Japanese martial art that accepts and redirects aggressive energy so that neither the defender nor attacker is injured. He also has 2 daughters who he says constantly teach him what he needs to know most about raising children in a violent world. We are indeed fortunate to have our keynote address today by Dr. La Cerva, an individual who cares deeply about preventing violence and believes that solutions are found by strengthening what is already good within ourselves, our families, our communities, and our culture. Please welcome Dr. Victor La Cerva.
I'd like to begin by asking everyone over age 60 to please stand up for a moment. I promise nothing bad will happen to you. I always like to begin by honoring our elders. No, stay up. I know a lot of people sit down whenever I say that, but we don't do enough of this in our culture. I want to honor those long lines of lessons on your hands and your face, those gray spots, gray streaks of wisdom in your hair, those dark spots of blessings that come at this time to remind us all to be grateful for your years of dedication and service. So please, a round of applause for our elders. I'd also like to ask all the teachers in the room, not just the faculty that taught the biomedical students and the medical students, but anyone who considers themselves to be a teacher, a noble profession to pass on wisdom from one generation to another. Please, a round of applause for all of the teachers in the room. There's a myth in our dominant culture, the myth of independence, that we do these things on our own, that we create everything in our lives on our own without the help of others. But I would challenge that myth today. Did you make the clothes that you're wearing on your back? Did you participate in growing the food that you ate for lunch? Did you help to construct this fine building that we're sitting in? We live in an incredibly complex and beautiful web of interconnectedness. And that is part of what we celebrate today. We celebrate all of those who helped make possible this day for our graduates. There's a tradition in the Tagalog language, which is spoken in the Philippines, and there's a particular phrase that I love called utang na loob, which means a debt of the heart. And essentially what it speaks to is those debts that each of us have in our lives that can never be repaid. Maybe it was an individual who helped us out at a particularly difficult time after the death of a loved one or someone close to us, who was there for us not just during the funeral or burial rites, but was constantly there as the weeks and the months passed. Maybe it was someone who helped get a family member out of the chaos and suffering of substance abuse. Maybe they were the ones that held out their hand and managed to bring that person back to a joyous and productive life. This notion of a debt of the heart is something that we all can relate to, that we all can understand at the depths of our being. We know who those people were in our lives. And so the first bit of advice, and I have only 5 pieces of advice for our graduates today, is to remember the importance of honoring. You notice that we began that. We began with honoring. We'll end with honoring. And honoring is a thread to keep in mind whatever form your practice or your research takes. To honor the people that you come in contact with who place their trust in you. To honor their families who want to be part and supportive in the healing process. To honor even the laboratory animals that sacrifice their lives that we might increase our knowledge about preventing suffering in human beings. I never made my own medical school graduation. I was coming back from doing some electives in Utah, and I was camping in New Mexico, my first time in New Mexico, while my med school graduation was going on back east. I neglected this basic aspect, this understanding that all of us climb upon the shoulders of the generations that came before us in order to move forward and progress in our lives. And it was my grandfather, born in Italy and came over here at the age of 5, that went to the graduation for me, even though I wasn't there. And he was the one who went up on stage to receive an honor that I had gotten in pediatrics. So this notion of honoring is critical. And in the time-honored tradition of see one, do one, teach one, which the medical students are well aware of, or if you're not already, you soon will be in terms of medical procedures. I invite you, now that we've begun the process of honoring, to carry it forward throughout the day. Take this opportunity to speak with those people who have supported you so far on this journey, and speak to them from the heart about your gratitude, about how you couldn't have done it on your own. The opportunity is there today, especially, to speak those words to them. The second bit of advice that I have for the graduates is to seek to move beyond apparent limitations. And the French have a wonderful word that describes this. It's called bricolage. And bricolage basically means to improvise, to use whatever tools are available in the moment to get the job done. But inherent in the concept, I think, is this notion of being able to move beyond what we think is possible. One of the best definitions that I've ever heard of public health and of medicine in general is that its mission is to redefine what is unacceptable. It's unacceptable in this country, in this modern day and age, for us to worry that our children might get polio when they go out to play in the summertime. When I was a child, that was not unacceptable. That was a reality that parents had to face in terms of their concerns. In an era where we are the wealthiest country in the world, I submit that it is unacceptable that 1 out of 5 children in New Mexico and a larger percentage of adults do not have basic access to health care insurance. In an era when so many people are struggling to pay for their medications, it is unacceptable, or it should be unacceptable, that pharmaceutical companies charge 300 to 400% above what it costs them to make the medication. And even pharmacies are guilty of upcharging on generic drugs of 100 to 200%. In an era when we know how to make child-proof guns, or guns that can only be fired by their intended user, what we call smart guns, it's unacceptable that every year we continue to lose teenagers to suicide with the family gun, or young children who get access to the family gun and inadvertently kill a neighbor or a friend. It is our business, and I submit it is part of your work to keep redefining what is unacceptable in our culture. So there I was in medical school, working on getting my GOD degree, and I came right up against the limitations, very early on, I came right up against the limitations of medicine as I watched my mother die of Hodgkin's disease. I was a third-year medical student when she died, but for the previous 2 years I had watched her have this intermittent swelling of her lymph glands and get tired, and her primary care physician kept delaying biopsying one of the nodes. And I remember at the time that I had this feeling that somehow, I didn't know how it was going to evolve, but that somehow when I delivered my first baby, or felt like I had actually delivered the baby, that was going to be the point at which my mother would pass. And indeed, that came to be true. But there's something about early on coming up against the limitations of our craft that really opens up the doors of compassion and understanding for us. I have 2 daughters, 17 and 21, of whom I'm very proud. Most proud because they are kind and good human beings, the kind of people that will walk over to the new kid in the lunchroom and say, hey, come have lunch with us. I support them for that, and I honor them for that more than their academic achievements and so on. Both of them have diseases that they struggle with. My younger daughter, despite medicine's best attempts, was still unable to get her asthma satisfactorily managed that she could continue to follow the passion of cross-country running. And my older daughter is off this semester trying to recover from a horrible disease, chronic fatigue immune dysfunction, which affects millions of people in this country. I'd like the biomedical graduates to stand up for a moment, those who are graduating today in the biomedical sciences. These stories are not unique to me. Everyone in this room has a similar story about the suffering related to the limitations of medicine. I'm asking you to help reduce that suffering, not only for my children, but for the other children and for the other people in this room. So I invite you to do your best to forward the research that's necessary to deal with both of these diseases. Please, a round of applause for our biomedical research students. Thank you. Now, I have to acknowledge that we've definitely come a long way since I was a medical student. We have witnessed enormous strides in the treatment of every kind of cancer and every form of chronic disease. I remember making rounds the pediatric wards and dealing constantly with Haemophilus influenza B invasive disease, kids with meningitis, cellulitis, many of whom ended up brain damage despite our best attempts because of a delay in diagnosis. That reality is gone. Once we had HIV vaccine in this state, we went from over 100 cases of invasive disease of this type to less than 5. So medicine continues to make progress. We averted a worldwide epidemic of SARS through the quick action and cooperation across nations of public health professionals. We have come enormous distance in terms of how we as healthcare professionals respond to families that are struggling with the difficulties of family violence. So I would hope that we will continue to make progress. I mean, right now in your Palm Pilot you have the PDR, and you have all sorts of drug interactions that you can immediately pull up. We used to lose patients from adverse drug interactions because that knowledge was not at our fingertips. We're making medicine internet simple, right? There's that thing that's out there on the internet now. If you see someone who's acting confused and dazed, you ask them to raise their hands, smile, and speak a simple sentence. And if they can't do those 3 things, you call 911 because it's an evolving stroke. Or it may be an evolving stroke, and we now have medicines that actually might help. So we have made enormous progress, and there's more progress on the way. Whenever I think about medicine and progress, I think about that line from Woody Allen's Sleeper. where Woody Allen is transported to some future time, a couple of hundred years in the future, and they wake him up, and he's having a discussion with the medical personnel that woke him up, and they're incredulous. They can't believe, what, you had no deep fat? You didn't have healthy tobacco products? Because the perspective, okay, that joke was a little hard to get, but he who laughs last is just slower. That's all right. We love everybody. But enormous progress is still to come. I am convinced in our lifetime that we will have nanotechnology delivery of cancer agents, so that instead of this sort of broad shotgun approach where we end up killing off a lot of the good cells like hair and intestinal lining, that this nanotechnology will help us direct the medicine right to the cancer site. I'm also convinced that in the future we will begin to get an HLA printout. Soon as you're born, you'll get a listing of all the diseases that you're most at risk for, that you will then be able to try and avoid and get specialized testing for, and so on. The possibilities are literally endless in terms of our forward motion. I was just reading something a week ago about a new class of drugs called aromatase inhibitors that, when given to women who are at risk for breast cancer, seem to reduce that risk by more than 80%. So we're now talking about aggressively trying to treat the genetic predisposition towards disease. That is enormous. I was reading my high school daughter's biology book and reading about the p53 gene, which has been called the guardian angel of the genome, because it has responsibility for correcting all the cells in the body when they begin to break down and not function properly. I can only imagine the miracles that will come out of our deeper understanding of the p53 gene. Third bit of advice: keep your heart open and live close to your tears. There's a wonderful Swedish word that expresses this sentiment, and it's what you say when there's nothing that can be said because the suffering is so deep. It's ufta. You simply say ufta, and it means, I understand that there's nothing I can say right now that will make things better, but I want you to know that I'm here with you. All of that's incorporated in that one simple phrase of ufta. Already you have begun to have experiences that you will never forget. And it's important to always remember the delicious abandon of a good cry. You know, Virginia Satir, a wonderful family therapist, used to say you need 4 hugs a day from other human beings to at least keep steady pace, 8 if you want to feel good, and 12 if you really want to make progress in your life. I personally think, I don't know how anybody gets through 2 weeks without a good cry, given the level of suffering that exists in the world. We go into any movie and my kids within 5 minutes are saying, is Dad crying yet? You know, they're taking side bets. I don't think it's just an Italian Hispanic heritage that promotes that. I think it's a natural, normal human function. And I invite you, because of all the suffering that you are going to see and carry, I invite you to never forget that, to remember the delicious abandon of a good cry. You've already begun to have experiences that will be emblazoned in your memory forever. The first autopsy you ever go to, the first baby that you help to deliver, the first time someone poops or pees or vomits all over you, the first time that you stop to provide assistance at a roadside emergency when you don't have all the tools of the hospital available to you. These are experiences that will always stay with you. And of course, there are those patients that one never forgets. I still, 30-plus years into my medical career, remember the elderly Hispanic woman in Harlem at the city hospital that I trained at, who sat in the emergency room for 4 hours and then quickly, once she was brought to the ward, succumbed of meningitis because of the delay in the medical care's responsiveness in taking care of her. And I remember the intern crying because she felt it was her fault. The first time that you lose a patient and you feel that it was your action or inaction that contributed to it is an incredible burden that everyone who's on this stage has carried. there are those patients that you will never forget. I remember the first episode that tuned me into the reality of family violence way back when, in the early 70s, when myself and another medical student had the opportunity to sew up a woman whose boyfriend had slashed her with a knife 27 times. And the resident worked on the face to minimize the scarring, and myself and another medical student spent hours practicing our stitching on her extremities. And you know what we did then? We sent her home. No social work intervention, no police report, no real response by the medical community to this horror of domestic violence. The image of her face is burned forever in my heart and in my mind. I remember getting a very sick 6-month-old with a chart this fat, about 3 pages of which I could actually read. And at that moment, as a medical student, deciding that I would print forever so that people would actually be able to benefit from the understanding and what we had gone through on all these previous admissions. I'm serious. This chart was mostly illegible other than the laboratory results. And here I've got this really sick kid, and it would have been lovely to have known some of what the previous thinking was about. So print, you guys. Let's get rid of that particular stereotype around physicians. And then there will be those experiences that continue to teach you. My first week in working as a public health physician in New Mexico, we had the prison riot up in Santa Fe. And all of the docs who worked for public health were charged with going into the prison and examining the prisoners. And it turned the lights on for me. All of these guys were scared because of what they had just witnessed in 3 days of horror and chaos. They all had rotting teeth and scarred eardrums, a result of the poverty that they had grown up in. They were mostly people of color. There was a training of a different sort than that which I had in medical school. I remember making the rounds as a circuit riding pediatrician for the public health department in doing well child clinics, and picking up an undiagnosed tetralogy of Fallot in Fort Sumner, an undiagnosed patient with cystic fibrosis in Clovis. This is in Well Baby Clinic that these patients came in. And that turned me on to the understanding of the difficulty of access and the difficulty of struggling families around chronic disease. So I want to read you a poem to close out this bit of advice. Find your own way in the world. This is by Donna Markova. Find your own way in the world. I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear of falling or catching fire. I choose to inhabit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a wing, a torch, a promise. I choose to risk my significance, to live so that that which came to me as seed goes to the next as blossom, and that which came to me as blossom goes on as fruit. Let's talk about men for a moment. Now, you've all seen those bumper stickers, right? Men are from Mars. Too bad they didn't stay there. All men are animals, but some of them make good pets. When God made man, she was only joking. If it has tires or testicles, at some point it's going to give you a lot of trouble. God gave man a brain and a penis and only enough blood to supply one at a time. If we can send one man to the moon, why not send them all? So what I'd like to do now to just loosen things up for a little bit, I know we're getting short of time, but I'd like you to just get with the person next to you, and for just a few minutes, I'd like you to just share the most ecstatic sexual experience you've ever had in your life. See, now, it's interesting. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to. The response is always the same. Most people laugh. They get that it's a joke. But there's always a few people that look really tense at the person next to them. Like, am I really going to have to do this? And then there's always a group in the back. They start right away. They don't need any further instructions. And then if you talk to people who like work emergency room, a lot of life and deaths type stuff, usually someone yells out, "That's not enough time. We need more than 5 minutes." So this just simply brings me to the third bit of advice. Never forget the healing powers of laughter and listening. Didn't it feel good? You feel the whole energy in the room change as we laughed and enjoyed a little internal jogging. We forget about these simple things in medicine often. We forget about the importance of just being there, not multitasking with a million things. Often when we listen as human beings, my kids will testify to this, you know, we're going through the list in our head, or we're thinking about what we're going to say next, or we're multitasking with something else. There is something about the healing power of just being present with another human being that I encourage you never to forget. I'm told that the Chinese character for the verb listen involves eyes, ears, mind, heart, and you. All of that is embodied in the character for the verb listen. Listen, as Lily Tomlin says, with the intensity normally reserved for speaking. Or listen as if there's a thief in your home. You know how you wake up in the middle of the night and you hear that noise? It's a basic healing balm that we can offer to our friends and family every day. Very low tech, but very important and critical and essential. Never forget the healing powers of laughter and listening. And our Navajo brethren, of course, have a wonderful celebration called Childejo. I think I've got that pronunciation pretty close. Which is whoever gets the baby to laugh for the first time is supposed to put on a big party to honor this important milestone in human development. What a beautiful piece of recognizing the importance of humor and laughter. I've spent many a visit out to Navajo country, and whenever I get introduced, which is often in Navajo, and at the end of the talk, which is often in Navajo, so I can't understand any of it, everybody's always laughing. So I know that they're doing some kind of joke on me. And that's fine, because this is so important to remember. And the listening is not about just listening to others, but also about listening to your own hearts, listening to your own sense of intuition in terms of what it is that needs to be done at this moment for this patient in your life. The final bit of advice is a simple one, but hard to practice. And that is, we cannot benefit others when disturbed and confused ourselves. One of the most difficult things that I've ever done in my life was practice this martial art of Aikido to the point after 5 years where I had to take a black belt test. And when you finally get your black belt after doing lots of practice and training and honing of your reflexes and techniques and so on, when you get your black belt, part of the tradition is the realization and understanding that what this simply means is that you are now ready to learn. So these fabulous degrees that you're getting today, that we're all here to celebrate with you, are really just that. They are just that you have now honed your mind and your abilities to the point where you are ready to learn. And one of the most important things that you can do for yourself on this journey is to remember that you cannot benefit others unless you're taking care of yourself, unless you continually refill that well that allows you to give, that allows you to be there for the patients who need you so much. So, if you'd like to play along for a moment, I just invite you to simply close your eyes. Just close your eyes, and as you breathe in and as you breathe out, you begin to feel this wave of relaxation and joy moving through your body. As you breathe in and as you breathe out, you just feel it moving gently through you. And as you breathe in appreciation for all the goodness in your life. And as you breathe out compassion for the suffering of others and the suffering of yourself. And as you breathe in and as you breathe out, you realize that this place of inner peace is always available to you. I invite you to open your eyes. Just a brief little touching of that place. And it's kind of like going to the gym. You know, you can't go to the gym and start working with 200-300-pound weights. But this place that is available to each of us, human beings have known about forever. They get there in different cultures through different portals, through prayer, through dancing, through chanting, through meditation. But it's the same place. It's that same place of inner peace and calm where our brain waves, our respiration, and our heart are all perfectly aligned and harmonized. And this place is a healing place for each of us. I invite you to strengthen that place of peace within you so that when you need it, it's like building up capacity. It will be there for you. And to that end, I'd like to share a few of my favorite stress dancers. And I use the term stress dancers because all of us would like to get to the point where we never have any stress in our lives. And we will, but our EKG will look like this. So I like the notion of dancing. The point of dancing is not to get to the end of the song. The point of dancing is to be somewhere in time and space and kind of flow with what's happening. And that's the essence of taking care of yourself in terms of the stresses that you as graduates will undoubtedly encounter. So, the first stress dancer is an easy one. Take a sigh. Everybody take a sigh. I didn't hear that sigh. Come on. Help me out with your warm, open-hearted, generous participation. Everybody take a sigh. Yeah. You don't have to put on Lycra. You don't have to go cross town to the gym. It's a built-in, normal, physiologic human response to help us deal with our stress. I encourage you to sigh as much as you like. Take in a deep breath, let it out with a joyful noise, and consciously let go of whatever stress you're carrying. Second stress dancer is to summon the gift of the moment. We live in an incredibly beautiful state, and we all know the healing power of a walk at sunset or the joy of a romp in the moonlight, but we often forget in the course of our day to weave that into our daily lives in such a way that we actually drink from that abundance in a real way, in a constant way. So I encourage you to summon the gift of the moment as you step outside afterwards into the sunshine, look up at the mountains, look at the flowers that are blooming, and really let it in. Let in that goodness into our hearts and our bodies. Third stress dancer is to remember to smile. You can try it right now. It doesn't hurt. And when you practice this mouth yoga, you instantaneously improve your physiology for the better. I've been working for quite a while to make it my first automatic response to something going wrong. Oh, the car won't start? I just crack as much of a smile as I can in that particular Malox moment. So practice smiling, mouth yoga, a very good one. Just two more. One is, this is a very great stress dancer to use when you're on the wrong line at the supermarket, right? Of course, you're at the end of the day, you're rushing, you're trying to get what you need, or you're stuck in traffic. You can simply close your eyes and visualize. You can try it right now. Close your eyes and visualize the face of someone that you know is going through a difficult time. Maybe they're going through a divorce, or they're dealing with an illness, or they just lost a loved one. Just see their face as clearly as you can in your mind and say silently to yourself, may you be free from suffering. What this practice does is it relieves you of some of the burden of worry that you're carrying around this person who's important to you. And at the same time, if you believe in prayer, if you believe in cosmic vibes, whatever word works for you, you're sending them some of that healing energy, healing balm that can be of use to them. And the final stress dancer, and then I just have a couple more remarks to close it out. The final stress dancer is at the end of the day when I'm getting ready to leave my health department little cubicle, I look at the piles of unfinished stuff on the floor, on the chair, on the desk. I pause for a moment, I look at the piles, and I say, stay. And then I get on with the rest of my day. So I want to invite you early on to develop for yourself a toolbox of the equivalent of stay, so that you peel off that wetsuit of your day, you take a mental shower. Somehow, you don't bring home the stress, the suffering, the difficulties that you've encountered in the course of the day and spread it around your living room. I encourage you to find those practices, as Aikido has been for me, that nurture you mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Another poem. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to demonstrate your worth over and over again, night and day, endlessly. You only have to allow your heart to be open enough to embrace all of you. Tell me more about what heals than what wounds. Without doubt, the sun and moon move in their heavenly arcs. Without doubt, life's celebration flows joyously in the silent beating of a butterfly's wings, the thunderous roar and fury of a summer storm, the slow opening of a seed into a tree. Without doubt, the aging cottonwood at stream's edge still basks in sunset glory. Whoever you are, no matter your conversation about who you are not, the world offers its abundance, calls you to be free, now and forever, over and over reminding you of your imperfect perfection. And now, just to formally close, 5 simple bits of advice. Remember the importance of honoring. Seek to move beyond apparent limitations. Keep your heart open and live close to your tears. Always remember, never forget, the healing powers of laughter and listening. And finally, we cannot benefit others if we are confused and disturbed ourselves. So I imagine Mother Teresa and Gandhi, 2 of my heroes, sitting down for dinner, a la My Dinner with Andre, for those of you that are familiar with that wonderful movie and play, and sharing thoughts back and forth over what would, in their case, probably be a very simple meal. And Gandhi would say, one of his most famous lines, "Be the change you want to see in the world." And Mother Teresa would simply respond with, "We can do no great things. We can do small things with great love." I shamelessly hawk my books wherever I go. If you're interested in concepts from around the world like those we explored in the talk, they're available by donation. I do it by donation, and the proceeds go to benefit HEAL Foundation, which works on creating healthy relationships. They're available in the foyer, and they'll also be available in the ballroom. By donation. $15 a book or whatever you want to donate. I just want to get the material out there for people to use in their lives in a good way. So, we're going to do a form of closing that's call and response. So I'm going to say something, and if you agree with it, I'd like it to yell out, yes. Okay? Pretty simple instructions. I believe in life. Yes. I believe in love. Yes. I believe in a planet at peace. Yes. I believe in a one-world family. Yes. I believe that these graduates are going to go out and do great things to reduce the suffering in the world. Yes. May our next act increase the yes in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victor, for those wonderful words.